Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening on a Friday, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us. And thank you to those who will take the time to catch the replay. Welcome to the NorthStar Café. And this is a space that is dedicated to having action oriented conversations on leadership development at the intersection of people, process, and technology. And for those of you that who are here for the first time, my name is Meenakshi Iyer, and I'm the founder and principal of NorthStar Solutions and Services, which is a boutique, future work oriented coaching, training, and consulting practice. And it's a virtual practice. So we have the privilege of working with clients from around the world. And the NorthStar Cafe is one of our passion projects, and we bring in guests from around the world to talk to us about topics that are current, that are very relevant to the intersection of people, process, and technology. And today, I am so pleased and thrilled to have Ashima Sharma, the founder and CEO of Dreamy, with us. And we're going to get into talking about career pivots, particularly into the space of tech. So Ashima and I met, well, no surprises, on LinkedIn, and it's been such a pleasure to get to know you, Ashima, and also collaborate with you. You were part of our conference last month, so we'll talk more about that in a minute. So just a quick introduction. So Ashima is the founder and CEO of Dreamy. Dreamy is a technology platform that is dedicated to making mentorship accessible for underrepresented individuals. And Ashima started her career in, believe it or not, chemical engineering, where she experienced firsthand the lack of representation, especially for certain groups, particularly women and other historically underrepresented groups in the workplace. And there's a lot that happened, and that's what we're going to unpack in our conversation today. And here she is, pivoting her career into the tech industry and setting up Dreamy as a technology platform to fill the exact need that she found when she was starting off her career. So Ashima managed corporate strategy at Cisco, led product strategy at Zendesk. She's been recognized by Techstars, NASDAQ Milestone Makers, Microsoft's M12 SaaS Launch Lab, and many other such organizations in recognition of her work with Dreamy. And in her free time, if and when she finds it, Ashima can be found deep in the Sierra Nevada, hiking or backpacking. Thank you so much, Ashima, for taking the time to be with us here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's always funny hearing my bio like read out loud because it's all true stuff. It's just so funny hearing about yourself like that. So thank you for that intro.
Absolutely. And we are so excited to dig into the topic, career pivots into tech. So as we get started, I'd love to hear from you. Tell us in your own words about your journey and what was your inflection point?
Yeah, so I think this will be somewhat relatable to some people, but when I first started off my career, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think we hear this across the board, right? How is a 17 or 18-year-old, when they're choosing their college major, supposed to know what they want to do for the rest of their life, unless if they're especially gifted and they know exactly what they want to do 3 decades from now. So for me, I grew up with parents who are engineers. That was something that was definitely heavily encouraged for me to pursue. And that's what I decided to embark upon. And without much research, which was mistake number one, which we can get into when I'm talking more about the pivot, but without much research on my end, I just chose chemical engineering. I had no idea what that actually would entail in terms of opportunities post-college. I actually wasn't even thinking about it like that. But it sounded like something that I felt like I could enjoy and that I could be good at as well. And 4 years after studying chemical engineering, I learned that one of the most popular pathways to take after you graduate is into the oil and gas industry. And that's exactly where I ended up, post-graduation for about 3 years or so.
And that's such an that itself is exciting, right? The choices you made. So, what kind of engineers are your parents? What prompted you to get into chemical engineering?
Yeah, they were not even remotely close to chemical engineering, I think, which is the funny part. But yeah, electrical. My mom did environmental. She also is an architect. So very different backgrounds in the family. I think for me, I just, again, I just didn't know any better at that time of what would about how to be, I guess, strategic about my decisions and what they would do 3 to 4 to 5 years from now. And that's something that I really talk about when you're going through your career pivot, just how your decision making today, you need to kind of layer in a little bit of a longer term view as well, as you're making these somewhat minor and small decisions every day. They actually start to add up, and something that you need to be thinking out is, what will this look like three years from now, which is very difficult, but it's something that now I've learned a little bit of the hard way, as I'm quite a few years now into my career.
So that that's an interesting point, and I just want to plug in here that so one of the reasons why we host the NorthStar Cafe is to really talk about these types of topics. And we are in the space of supporting particularly mid-career technology and agile professionals with their leadership development journeys. And with what we are seeing with the pandemic, 2 years on, almost 2.5 years in now, our lives have changed, our ways of working have evolved. And I think people have also sort of have had the opportunity to sit back and really reevaluate their lives and their career choices and all of that. And we're seeing more and more people either seeking a new job or seeking a different career.
Yep.
And your story really stuck with me in that context. But before we delve more into that, something you said just now in terms of having a bit of a long-term view as well, and how important that is from your own personal experience. What's your view on how quickly things are shifting these days? How do you balance that, having a long-term or a mid-term view and still being able to respond to changes?
I think that's a good question. I think change is inevitable, though. It feels like there's a rapid pace of change right now, which is the case. But even if we look 10 years prior, there was still a lot of change happening in the industry. I think at that time when I was making my career decisions, there was a lot of interest in data science, machine learning. That was a huge topic at the time. So there's a lot of interest, understandably, then. And now we're seeing a lot of change in even what work looks like, and work environments look like, and how flexible work can be. Change is inevitable. Right now, we're just seeing a really fast pace of change in the workspace in general. But what I really wish, now that I've had a few years under my belt now, and I've made so many different decisions and made so many different changes in my career, I think what I really wish I had back then was just a better understanding of short-term goals and long-term goals. Because at that phase of my life in early career, and as I was heading into mid-career, a lot of my decision making was more in the lens of a short-term goal. Like, I need to get promoted in 1 year, or I need to get into this position in 6 months. We have, a lot of our the duration of time that we're thinking in is a lot shorter. It's only until you really start to head into the mid-career arena where you start realizing, I'm looking now at like my 5-year plan, my maybe 10-year plan of what my career can be, where I can go. And it's just something that I wish I had a little bit more coaching on earlier on in my career. And I will say, something that has helped me develop a little bit more of that understanding and develop a little bit of that skill set to look a little bit later down the line is actually coaching. It's something I've tapped into a lot. especially as I was, embarking on being a new manager and, starting a company. Coaching has been really, really helpful for me to kind of sift through all the different thoughts that are swirling on my brain, all the confusion, all the different pathways and decision points that I could make, and start to get clarity. I think at the end of the day, that's something that I realized that was really difficult for me to lock down when I was earlier on in my career, was clarity of where I could go, what skills I wanted to develop, who I want to be, what fulfilled me. There just wasn't a lot of clarity at that point. And that's fairly normal. But I think if I had a framework to help me sift through that and to get to better decisions faster, that would have definitely helped me out, especially as I was pivoting my career.
It's so interesting that you called out coaching as something that has supported you in this journey. And, I'm going to put a pin in it and come back to you on that after our conversation as well, because I went through that journey as a coach training journey in the last 2.5, 3 years, and I'm a ICF certified coach now. And what sold me on that was really, to your point, my experience as a client as I started that journey.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. The clarity, to me, coaching is that space. It's a safe space to have a conversation with myself, but it's a facilitated conversation, and the coach facilitates that conversation with myself. That's how I've experienced it. And it's very interesting for me to hear from you, having had that experience as well as you were doing a career pivot. So let's get into that. Tell us more about your what got you started. What was your inflection point after you started off as a chemical engineer?
Yeah, so let's rewind a few years. Let's sit by the campfire and talk about it. So, at that point, I think I was maybe 1 or 2 years into my career in oil and gas, and I think I still to this day can't really explain what happened, but all of a sudden, I was just heading to this territory of severe confusion. Just severe confusion about, and maybe also realization that what I thought this would be or what I was looking for in my career wasn't what I was getting every day. And that can be a really difficult realization to come to. And sometimes we don't know that that's what we're feeling. It manifested itself in anxiety for me, confusion, a lot of self-doubt. I didn't know where any of this was coming from, but I just remember one day walking into work and feeling that. And it was hard because what I didn't want to acknowledge at that time was I put in so much work, so much time, energy, and, to be frank, also money right into my education, to be this one thing, to be this chemical engineer, whatever it may be, right? You just invest so much into what you thought you would be for a long period of time. And for me to recognize only 2 years in that, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't what I want to be, or this isn't what I want to do, that is really hard to come to. And I didn't have enough people around me who are going through that same thing or who are openly talking about it. So I felt even worse about myself, actually, that am I a failure because I didn't know how to properly plan out my career and chart out the exact path that I wanted to go on. And I think one of the hardest parts, and I know people can relate to this because I get messages afterwards. One of the hardest parts, interestingly enough, was going on LinkedIn. Going on LinkedIn and was seeing, my peers or just even people I didn't know who were around the same phase of my career doing really, really well and almost embarking on this pre-charted path that it felt like they had everything planned out. And here I was sitting, feeling like, I don't know where I want to go. I don't know what I want to do. I know I'm not happy right now. This isn't it for me. I feel like a failure. That's just what kept swirling in my mind. And it can be pretty extreme. But that's just where my head went to after just feeling like this for several months. I think now looking back, what I really was going through was just a realization that I wasn't being fulfilled, that this just wasn't the environment for me. It also was a very harsh environment in general, but it just wasn't the environment for me, and I needed to make a change. I don't think I was just ready emotionally at that point to acknowledge that I needed
Mm,
to make a change, because change scares a lot of people. You talked about how we're going through a lot of change right now. It's very scary when everything you knew, everything that you set a routine for, is about to dissipate essentially, and you need to shake that up. And fear of change leads to indecision, and that's
mm,
exactly what I was going through for, I think, almost one entire year. Lack of indecision, and just almost just intense confusion. There was then a point though where I think I was discovering my love for the outdoors, going backpacking a lot, and that actually gave me a lot of clarity, because I would spend a lot of time away from my normal work environment. I would spend time away from my phone on the LinkedIn updates, and I would have a lot of time to start sifting through my thoughts. And there was this point after, almost a year feeling like this, that I need to do something. I can't feel like this
mm,
forever. I need
mm,
to do something. Um, and that's when actually I realized that I don't have the right mentorship in my network and the right career support in my network of someone who could guide me. I remember when I realized that I needed to make a change, and when I realized that I needed support in making that change, I tried to look for mentors. And that's a big point of why I started Dreamy. But I remember, again, going back on LinkedIn and trying to message all these people who were in different, maybe had the same background as me educationally, but we're in all these different other fields that I don't know anything about, and I wanted to just learn about it, right, and learn from their experience and help get guidance on how to get there. And I remember basically ending up empty-handed, no responses whatsoever, really no formal structure internally at the company as well. And so that's when I made a lot of mistakes on making that pivot. So
mm.
I'll pause there, see if there's any follow-up questions, but I could then get into the moment at which I said, okay, I'm going to make a pivot, and all the mistakes that I made.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just had some, observations, if you will. Like you hit on so many points there, Ashima. First of all, thank you for sharing your story with such candor.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that the whole thing around self-doubt and all of that you talked about, in my personal experience, it hasn't gone away for
Yeah.
me. I remember when I first moved to the US 14 years ago, I was, I'd already had 10 to 12 years of experience, career experience that didn't matter. So having, the need to start from scratch,
Yeah.
and even now when I'm in work environments, it's very easy for self-doubt to creep up. Um, when and I loved what you said about fear of change leads to indecision. It's like then I start overthinking, and
Yep.
and everything sort of turns. I turn everything on me,
Yep.
and exclude the environment and all the other causal agents completely, and
Yes.
take it all on me. So I was able to relate to that as you were sharing your story. The other thing that I did want to call out is, and this is something I've talked with Tiffany in one of our conversations before, uh, how uh, how intentional we have to be about how we use social media,
Yeah.
because everyone's lives are so curated,
Yep.
and we sort of, and I've been exactly there, what you're talking about. I would look at my contemporaries and people that I know,
Yeah.
who have, we all started our careers around the same time. So it was like, it was a reel in my head as you were talking about that. So I just wanted to share that back with you. But yeah, so tell us how you landed into the space of tech. Before that, did you have any intersections with using technology or building software, etc., in your chemical engineering experience?
Yeah, I mean, so we did, we learned, how to code, and we learned a lot of different programming languages in school. It's not the same as being in a tech company.
Mm,
a lot of these industries, oil and gas, manufacturing, construction, very different pace, very different processes, very different factors. A lot of it is all about mitigating risk and making sure safety is the number one priority as you're embarking on new projects. And the level of capital that's going into these projects is several orders of magnitude higher than what you would see in the tech industry. A big difference for the tech industry from where I had been and what I had been trained in is all about taking risk and moving fast and maybe even
Mm,
sometimes breaking things depending on how innovative the company is and how much that is encouraged. Complete opposite values, complete opposite work culture as well, complete opposite level of transparency internally. Just everything was a complete 180. But let's like back up and to the point where, I'm sitting at my desk. I take my backpacking trips. I realized I need to make a change. I didn't know I wanted to get into the tech industry, by the
mm,
way. It's not something that was like shining on me as like this clear sign, like move to the tech industry. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I was thinking through everything. I mean, I was thinking of going into food and beverage. I was thinking of going into even manufacturing, tech, healthcare. The world felt open to me in a positive sense, but in a negative sense, it also felt very overwhelming to me because I didn't know where my skills would be the most transferable. That's like step number one.
mm,
And then the most important thing, I didn't know where I would be happy, right? The last thing I wanted to do was spend a lot of time, energy, and effort, and even perhaps financial resources to re-educate myself and then end up in the same position. That's something that I was actually really nervous about going on into a pivot. So that's something I know that can is very relevant to a lot of people who are pivoting their career, like just hoping that you're making the right decision and that you're not going to end up at square one if you make a change. So for me, here's the biggest mistake I made when I realized I needed to make a change in my career. I applied to everything. I
mm,
didn't do any research. Also, it was very difficult to find those mentors, so I didn't really have a lot of contextual advice to help me understand and filter through what would be right for me. But so I did what I thought was right, which was let me just send out an application to literally every job that sounds like they could need me and see what happens. And obviously, what that ends up leaving you feeling like is very drained. Within 2 or 3 months of me doing that, just spending my evenings sending out job application after
mm,
job application to seemingly arbitrary roles, it just ended up leaving me emotionally drained. And
mm,
that was a really bad use of my resources, because you have to think about your energy and your time as resources that you're pouring into and investing into your pivot. You need to really be mindful of how you're conserving that and that it's going to a very thoughtful and very process oriented almost pivot. For me, I didn't have any process. I didn't have any NorthStar that was guiding me. I didn't have any objective. I was just applying to every job so that I could just start getting a call and start getting interviews. For me,
mm,
that felt like progress. Really, that was actually counteractive to
mm,
any progress, because now I'm investing more energy and more time researching for interviews for jobs that probably will never align to what I was actually looking for, never aligned to where I wanted to go. But here I was pouring hours and hours of time into that. And
mm,
so, what I would recommend to people, please learn from my mistake. I know there can be a point where I felt desperate. That's where I was at. I felt desperate. So that's why, hence my actions. If you're feeling like that, where you really need to make a change and you're desperate for that change, please invest the time actually into really lining out pros and cons of your current role, what your values are, what you really need from a job, what are the skills that you have today, and what do you feel like are gaps that you want to develop that are really exciting for you. Like put that upfront time into the planning phase, please, because that's something I wish I did. And that would have saved me almost 6 months. I mean, that's a lot of time, 6 months of time of basically going around in circles. The mistake number 2 was going about the career pivot by myself. I got into a point in my career where I couldn't really go to my parents anymore, for advice. And I feel very privileged that I was even able to go to my parents for advice in the beginning, right? That's a very privileged position to be in. But there's a point for a lot of us where we hit a point in our career where you're accumulating so much experience that's no longer relevant to where someone can guide you, and you need someone who gets it. So point number 2 is do not do the career pivot on your own. I did a lot of it on my own without consulting with anyone, without just getting a sounding board, without asking, does it sound right? Man, so many mistakes made because I would take all these interviews and potential offers without ever asking anyone, like, am I in line here? Asking someone, particularly a mentor who has been there, done that, who's a few steps ahead of you, they start to uncover blind spots for you, right? And I had a lot of blind spots. That probably is a whole other conversation. But a lot of the blind spots pertain to what role I should be applying to, what level I should be coming in now that I had 3 years of experience, what industry was moving, in a really exciting manner, what industries I should be looking at, even compensation, stocks, like all these different aspects of a job hunt that you need someone a few steps ahead of you who's in there, who can help to peel back the curtains, essentially. I could keep going on, but
no, that's a lot of wisdom right there.
yeah,
And I want to touch upon a couple of things, and you said it. And this is something that I've shared in the past as well, that career success is a team sport.
yeah,
And that's exactly your experience. And I loved how you called that out. And, this concept of having a personal board of directors,
yes, yeah,
and you have to be so intentional in recruiting them, making sure you have a coach, a mentor,
yeah,
and I would even say a financial planner,
yeah,
a wellness coach, a friend, a confidant. And they can be different people or the same people playing different roles, but the key is to not go it alone.
yeah.
And I loved your messaging around that. um, I wanted to ask you, what were these were all the mistakes you made, but what was your personal learning and growth from all this?
Yeah, I think yeah, because I do tend to talk about a lot of the mistakes I made, primarily for, to help someone else out who kind of can relate to where I'm at. But you're right, there's a lot of growth and lessons that came from the pivot too. One was there is a sense of empowerment once you get through the really tough parts and the really rough days and the rejections and the confusion. There's actually a sense of empowerment when you get that job, right? When you get that call saying, we loved you on the final interview, we're pleased to offer you, an offer. Those words, like the recruiters who get to say that words, they have the best job ever, because those words are life-changing for someone, right? It just starts to validate that my hard work went somewhere, and there's a tangible outcome from all the work that I've been pouring into it. So there is a sense of empowerment of taking a risk. Now make sure it's a calculated risk, but there's a sense of empowerment from taking a risk, putting in the work, and then getting to the outcome that you are looking for. And also, I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, and that's why I embarked on this whole startup path, is if there is something that's calling out to you that you need to be doing, take that as a sign and lean into that. That's something that I think I really felt empowered by now making that change. And I'm happy that I lean into a lot of fear, because I really do think there could have been a scenario where I just didn't take any action. I really think there's a very viable scenario where I just stayed there, and I still would have been content, but would I have been fulfilled, right? So I just feel like once you make that pivot, it starts to create this really nice positive reinforcement in your mind that, oh, I can take that additional risk to pursue that other dream that I had, right? And that's what it's really done for me. I think if I had not pivoted into tech, I would never have been exposed to product development life cycles and how to build software and corporate strategy. And then I would never have maybe been exposed to startups and taken a risk to, solve a problem I feel very passionate about and build an entire startup around it. So that's something that I really want to impart to others, that, you never know what your pivot can start to open up for future opportunities in your career. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
So well said. Go
there's
ahead.
one other thing I wanted to say too. One part of what I really feel passionate about is actually sharing a little bit of behind the scenes of what you see on my LinkedIn page, because I very well could understand someone going to my LinkedIn profile and it seems like this like pre-planned, ordeal and pre-planned journey. What you don't see on my LinkedIn is that I took a job in my pivot. I actually took a job at a growing startup that's not even on my LinkedIn, and it was not the right fit for me. So I want to be like very apparent, very transparent here, that my pivot wasn't a complete success either. The first role that I took, I only took it for 3 months. It was 3 months into that role that I realized this actually wasn't right for me. I felt like all my effort went nowhere and I was back at square one. So I just want to like be very transparent that it wasn't a perfect pivot by any means, even after I started to learn the right way to do it. So it takes time. Give yourself grace. And build that personal board of directors so you don't feel as alone as you're going through these really big decisions in your life.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as you were talking, it's not a straight line. It's a squiggly line that somehow makes sense
Exactly.
eventually, right?
Yeah.
I did want to call out what you did for us last month. So Ashima joined us for a lightning talk at our Future Work conference last month that NorthStar co-hosted with Suffer LLC. Tiffany Castanio and I were the co-hosts, and we talked about the future of work in the context of women shaping the pandemic pivot. And Ashima shared her story of how she pivoted her career and how she started Dreamy, and she shared with us about Dreamy. And I'll plug in the link of that talk in this video afterwards. Just wanted to do a quick shout out. So, Ashima, thank you for sharing that. And why don't you tell us very quickly what Dreamy is all about and how you live your purpose through Dreamy?
Yeah, what a powerful question, especially early in the morning on a Friday. There was a point in my career where I think now I realize fulfillment dictates actually a lot of the decisions that I make. So there's a point in my career where I realized that I feel like I have a lot of skills and a lot of passion and drive to really change a lot of the issues and challenges that I faced in my career, particularly that difficulty in finding mentors when I was going through that career pivot. I looked into why it felt so difficult to tap into mentorship internally in a company and even externally. And the number one thing that I would hear on hundreds of calls was that mentorship is a really manual process, very difficult to coordinate. And oftentimes we just leave it up to luck or organic connections. Well, luck is actually dependent on your social capital, and it's dependent on, the strength of your network, and what, that assumption that we can leave mentorship up to luck is assuming that, everyone has an equal strength in their social capital. That's not the case. 60% of individuals today do not have a mentor, despite the proven benefits it has on your career trajectory and actually even job satisfaction to some degree. So I said, okay, well, if mentorship is a really manual process, that sounds like a problem that I've been trained in all my engineering career to basically learn how to solve manual things and how to automate and streamline. And that was a very compelling problem that I wanted to take on. So what Dreamy is all about is alleviating all the administrative manual work around coordinating and planning and scaling mentorship programs. So that way more people can have access to such a critical career resource. So our platform takes care of all the mentor-mentee training, matching, scheduling, tracking. So that way, you're not, program managers, DEI leaders, HR leaders are not spending hours and hours and hours trying to stitch together a really critical resource through tools that just don't scale, like Excel sheets, Google Forms, and emails. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to do. We work with nonprofits, educational institutions, and corporations. And we've been able to power mentorship for refugees, for military veterans, for single mothers, single fathers who are looking to better their career in some way, and just really tangible results and outcomes of what software can do for good. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do. And it is really a dream come true. And
and you aptly named it
yeah,
Dreamy.
exactly.
Do you have a story around the name?
Yeah, people ask me all the time, how did you come up with the word dreamy? I will say, so I wanted the word dream to be in there somehow, or limitless, because that's what my name means.
Yes.
And I remember looking, it's a really sad story. I remember looking for domain names and what I could actually afford at the time. And dreamy.io was a very affordable domain name. So that's kind of the backstory behind the name. But you know what? I ran a poll asking people, should we stick with the name? Should we rebrand? And a stark majority said we should keep the branding of Dreamy. So Dreamy's here to stay.
That's fantastic. And what just occurred to me, Ashima, is Dreamy is I dream.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know you said that to me. That's a really, really good way to frame it. Yeah, it's true. And it's all about this concept that together we are limitless, right?
Yes.
The concept of building your personal board of directors, that together you really need that support, that network of support to achieve your dreams and pay it forward to others who are looking to do the same. So yeah, that's what it's all about.
So we have a question for you and a comment. So Amit,
cool.
Yeah, Amit Gupta, thank you for joining us. So yeah, compliments for you, Ashima. He says it's a brave journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Amit has a question. He says, how did you arrive at choosing tech as the path ahead?
Yeah, okay, we didn't get to touch upon that much. Very good question. So yeah, let's go back to that time when I was looking at basically every industry under the sun that I thought I could go into. At the end of the day, the reason why I ended up choosing tech was I had to go back and understand what wasn't working for me today. And I think a big part, as I started to ask myself that question and literally start writing lists of what I wanted, and I still have those lists in an old journal, by the way. But I started writing down lists of that I really did need a faster pace of work. I think that was a big theme that came up for me, that I needed more challenge. I needed a fast pace of work. And I wanted to take more risks at work as well. I wanted to maybe develop my own processes, or, develop my own projects, right? I think there was a sense of creativity that I was looking for that I wasn't getting at the time. And so as I started writing this down, and as I started reading job descriptions in detail, and also just started to read more of the business news, actually, it started to become apparent to me that tech was a very, one of the top industries that could really hit all those boxes. At that time, I didn't know if, what I was writing was what I would actually get at tech, but turns out, I was onto something, because that's exactly what I experienced when I took my first role. And to some degree, it was a culture shock for me of how fast paced it was and how complex it was, right? And how much risk taking there was. There was actually a huge culture shock I went through, but it definitely checked all those boxes of what I was looking for. And I realized that's actually why I chose engineering, to some sense, that I was looking for a combination of creativity and, analytics and technical knowledge. And I was looking for a way to basically have a part in innovation, which sounds really broad and cliche, but that was at that time what my understanding of the tech industry was. And
Mm.
now that I've been through it, yes, it definitely is a very, very clear way to have a really cool part in changing what tomorrow looks like for people. So, yeah.
I love that, changing what tomorrow looks like for people.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I hope that answered your question, Amit. Let us know. Um, as we begin to sort of wrap up this conversation, Ashima, I wanted to ask you about um, what would tell us more about what's in future for Dreamy. What are you looking to do?
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny because I'm gonna probably not take my own advice here, where I was talking, build a three, like know what decisions you're making 3 years out and how it's gonna impact it. Um, for startups, life, the unit of measure for time is so different.
yes,
It's so hard to even know 3 years from out, right? I'm always doing quarterly planning for Dreamy, and,
yeah,
and plans still change.
yes,
Um,
yes.
but, very good question. So we just finished and wrapped up our experience with Techstars. We are in the Social Impact Accelerator, probably a life-changing experience for me as a founder, and also life-changing for Dreamy as a company. And for anyone who is an aspiring startup founder, happy to talk about that and the accelerator experience. Coming out of that, it's all about scale. Actually, it's all about we have proven out that there's a need here. We've launched in market. We have a working product. We are developing the product continuously. So we've gone through a lot of the shaky first steps that a lot of startups need to go through to validate. We're now in scale and growth mode, which is actually really exciting. Like as an
Mm.
engineer, I'm like, oh my God, yes, we get to figure out how to scale and 10x everything that we've been able to do so far. So we're already on a global level, which is exciting, but I really want to make sure that we're scaling Dreamy with the equal amount of empathy, intention, and care that we put into it when we are building out the MVP of it. So
Mm.
it's a hard balance to strike, because there's a lot of exciting opportunities that have come our way that I've actually had to push out because we just weren't at a stage or a position ready to take it on and do it very, very well. And it's something that you often have to balance as a startup founder, which is like taking risk, but also trying to meet the high standards that you set for yourself. And it can be very hurtful and difficult when you don't meet them. And that's just part of the process. But I want to be very mindful of that going forward, of balancing growth and also quality as well.
Hmm. You hit upon a point that Elaine Gold, one of my earlier guests on the show, talked about um, this journey of being from a founder to a leader,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's exactly what you're referring to as you start making those very um, thoughtful and impactful decisions
Yeah.
around what to grow and how to scale.
Yeah. It's hard because for something like us, there's a lot of different pathways that we can go on. There's so many different ways that we can grow. And I think that's been one of the most difficult parts for me is prioritization. And it
Yes.
comes back to even prioritization for those who are in a corporate role too. That's also just as difficult. There's a lot of priorities that you have to set internally, and it's how you go about that framework and what is in your prioritization criteria. That changes over time for me as a startup founder. And you touching upon going from a founder to a leader is definitely part of this journey. Through one of the programs we went through with NASDAQ, actually, I got paired with an executive coach. So coaching is like a big part of something I believe in. And she changed my life, actually, of how I should be thinking about not, Ashima starting out a company out of her garage with a small team. It's Ashima as a leader, and really determining the vision and direction of a real company. Making that shift is a really interesting one. And, working with her really empowered me to start thinking about us like that, and thinking about myself as a leader like that as well.
Absolutely. It's all about understanding the power of leading from anywhere or leading
Yeah.
from where you are, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what your title is, and
Yes.
everybody is a leader in their own right. Yeah, this is so. How, when did you start Dreamy, Ashima?
Yeah, so it was a passion project, ironically enough, out of an Excel sheet. So like the exact tool that we're replacing. But that's where I first start whenever I want to map out something from a product perspective. But yeah, it started off as a passion project from an Excel sheet in October of 2020, but it was not something I ever thought of as a startup or a company.
Mm,
It was primarily a drive for me to solve something, a very big problem I faced in my career, and a genuine sense of curiosity on how I could try and have some part to solve it. So I did not write up a pricing plan or business plan or anything. It was a completely free like Excel sheet where people would sign up and I would manually match them to mentors in this super time consuming and manual way. And then in September of 2021, I think the moment where I was feeling again a little bit of that confusion in my role at that time, despite it being the probably most perfect role for me ever, and the best team I've ever worked at, and the best position I've ever worked at Zendesk. I just suddenly hit this like point where I'm like, maybe I need to take another risk in my life, and maybe I take another risk in my career, and maybe this Dreamy thing, this mentorship thing is what I can maybe try and spend my time doing, as well as
mm.
going outdoors. But that will never change, going outdoors and, just spending time outside. But yeah, September 2021, when it was a real company, I started taking it as seriously and quit my job and took that risk before I even knew Techstars was even a thing.
Mm.
I gave myself 6 months. I even remember telling my manager when I told him I needed to take a break and a step back, was that, I'll be back in 6 months. I was like, yeah, I just need 6 months to take a break and, just explore things for myself and work on passion projects. And, now we're 8 months since then. So looks like I'm a little bit over that deadline I gave to myself.
That is just absolutely inspiring. Look at how far you've come
Thank you.
in
But
less
there's
than a
a lot of
year.
bumps along the way that I
Yeah,
didn't even
but
talk about. So I just want to make sure it's always realistic. There were a lot of bumps along the way too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think the key that I'm taking away from this, Ashima, is that you stuck through. It's your grit and your perseverance and the clarity in your vision and your thought process. And you took a lot of your own advice, right? You didn't go it alone. You have your own personal board of directors that you figured out,
Yeah.
and once you start with conviction, everything sort of falls into place. It's like the universe conspires with you, right? Like Paul Coelho
Yeah.
says.
Oh my gosh. I feel that more than ever. Maybe it's a little bit of a overly optimistic version of myself, or maybe I'm coming off of like the high of like demo day and Techstars, but I am a firm believer in that you put something out there, you start voicing a passion of yours or a vision of yours, and so miraculously people will show up to help you, resources will show up to help you. Now again, I recognize a lot of privilege that I have to get here, but there has just been a lot of sheer coincidences that have popped up that I'm like, maybe the universe is conspiring with me here, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I believe in that.
We talked about, one of the things we talked about at our conference last month was being sponsor ready at all times.
Yeah.
And then that's exactly what you are referring to.
Yeah.
The readiness and that sense of awareness and being present in the moment is what transforms into coincidences.
Yeah, and here's the one thing that I've learned, because I am definitely an introvert. I grew up being a very shy person. I never voiced anything that I wanted in my career, actually. I never advocated for myself. I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought that was bragging, which was completely wrong sense of what it really is. I would never tell my managers earlier on in my career to what, like the amount of work that I was actually doing. And now I've learned over time that no one else is going to be advocating for you as much as you will. No one is going to be voicing the work that you're putting into something as much as you will. And that's something that I think I've really been empowered to do since starting Dreamy is I need to be out there telling people what I'm working on and also what I need, right? And making asks really clearly. And similarly in a corporate role, I wish I had learned to do that earlier on, because that is really how you get to where you want to go, is making it clear, right? Just communicating where you're at and where you want to go, and resources will start to show. But if you don't do that, no one will know what you're looking for. And I think that was a big mistake I made earlier on in my career too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, Ashima. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Excuse me. Your story and the path forward that you have for yourself, the clarity with which you're approaching it, the conviction that you have, and the support system that you've created for yourself. It's just fantastic. And I'm so looking forward to becoming one of your customers in a few months.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and also your support. Thank you so much for offering a space for people to share their stories very authentically and vulnerably. I think hopefully it helps someone out there who is listening, because I think more of these conversations actually need to happen on a channel like LinkedIn, because I know what it can feel like when you feel a little bit of the opposite. So thank you for offering this space for me to come here.
Yeah, absolutely, Ashima. And so I also want to let everyone know that go check out dreamy.io. And one of the things where NorthStar is looking forward to collaborating with Dreamy is to use the Dreamy platform as a customer ourselves for our mentorship program that we launched last year. And we intend making it an annual offering. It's called Building My Runway. It's a global virtual one-on-one mentorship program for mid-career IT and agile women professionals, and particularly those who speak English as their second, third, fourth language. And we had a hugely successful inaugural cohort last year of 11 mentees paired with individual mentors from India and the US. And we had phenomenal outcomes, and we are so inspired that we want to do it again this year and make it an annual offering. And when I came across Ashima, came across Dreamy, and saw what Dreamy can do for the kind of work that I'm looking to do, it was a no-brainer to sign up. So I'm really, really excited about it. Ashima, did you have a specific message for people, technology, or change leaders in the context of Dreamy?
Yeah, it comes down to at any point in your career, something that I really actually want to pass along is that at any point in your career, you need a mentor and you need a sponsor and you need a coach. But also at any point in your career, you can be that mentor for someone else, actually. And that's something that we really try to empower mentees and mentors alike. That label is actually very fluid. And one of my biggest dreams through Dreamy is to really start enabling this culture of paying it forward, this culture of giving first, no matter where you're at, because everyone has an ask, everyone has also a give. So you may feel like you're not qualified enough to be a mentor, or have enough experience. Actually, you are. There will be definitely someone out there who's probably in that same position, wishing that they had someone to talk to and be that sounding board for them that maybe is earlier on than you in their career. So I would encourage everyone to actually seek out those opportunities to be that mentor for someone as well.
How wonderful. Paying it forward, give before you get.
Yeah.
Collaboration over competition. So
yeah.
I'm so so many parallels between our two value systems here, and it just warms my heart.
Same here. Same here. I have a very warm heart now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashima, for your time today. And yeah, and thank you everyone that caught us live just now, and those who will watch the replay. Let us know if you have any questions. Feel free to connect with either or both of us on LinkedIn. And take care and be well. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.